All right. So tonight's demo is from Matt Monaco. Matt apprenticed under Richard Raffin. He's got a lot of great skills. He's going to be doing some skew work. He's going to be doing some spindle work, some face grain work, a good myriad of the stuff he's teaching over this week. And Matt's graciously been here for 4 days teaching. Great. Been teaching all day, so he's kind of tired, and he's still going to do a demo. I'm going to let Matt take it over. Matt's got a wonderful thing going on. Matt Monaco.
All right. Thank you, guys. Applause before I even put my finger on a tool. I don't know about that. That's a little risky. No, I appreciate you guys having me out here. This is something I love to do, which is to demonstrate my, that's something that's transferred into what I do now is to demonstrate and teach. I love to be able to share the craft, given that it's been around long enough that I would like to see it around longer and stand into the future. We're all responsible for doing that, being here and wanting to do that. So every method and way that we can do that is a really good thing. So I appreciate that. Everyone that's contributing to that. We're all doing that. So it's a wonderful thing. We're going to take a look at something called the skew chisel. Who's heard of that? Who loves the skew chisel? Yeah? Who's never used one in their life? No? Yeah? Okay. Well, anyway, so what we're going to do is take a look at some of the things I like about it, some good, some bad, and first start out with a very simple blank, talk a little bit about grain orientation, and really just show some of the mechanics with it, see how the tool's actually cutting, and I would think it's best to actually see the tool, not necessarily here, but to also just pass it around, just to see the grind that I prefer, and then we can talk about just a few simple grinds. There's a preference that I have. I'll put this under somewhere where we can see this. How about here? Is that good? From the way you're seeing it, are you seeing it straight on or is that upside down? Okay, well, let's see it the right side up, huh? So there we go. So what you're seeing here with the check is something that I prefer. That's the grind I have coming around here right now. We'll throw a few out here. And when I say throw, I mean hand, because I don't think this is something to catch. No, we won't catch this. So this would kind of just go to represent how I'm viewing what's a good commentary on type of grind for best usage as I see it. When I say I see it, that's just a preference. So there are far more opinions in wood turning than facts as I see it. But the facts do matter because they'll often keep you safe, and having the preference to know why a tool works this particular way for you is always a good thing. So this would be the grind I prefer, where I have a soft radius. That's actually what you're seeing, something that I've helped to Robust Tools, or actually say really Brent English, come up with a kind of a grind, which is just something that I would use. I find that the peeling action with it is a little bit better. I find that having the soft radius as opposed to something that's just a taper allows you to introduce a wider portion of the cutting edge when you're actually when you're planing and also peeling. So we'll see that, and what we're going to do first is actually just take a simple blank, rough it down with a skew. I'm going to show you how to create absolutely horrible catches, the worst kind ever, but also to clean it up. And then what we're going to do after that is transfer that into doing a really difficult project that's really fun and I think inspiring, then lead into a spindle out of walnut with a loose ring on it. So we'll have some fun doing it. And this right here would be a far more straight tapered skew, not something that I prefer using. When I put an X through it, again, these X's, you can look at those as preference marks or opinions, because it's not a fact that you can't use this tool effectively and get good results. It's just that I prefer this kind of thing over here, thus that's what I'll be sharing with you. Something like this, this is just an oval skew. If you're going to truly think of a paint can opener or like a back alley weapon, I suppose, this would be the one, okay? This isn't worth much to me. There are some great turners that use it well. Nick Cook would be one of them that I've seen use an oval skew quite well. And I just don't prefer having the stock that's convex that doesn't allow me to make peeling cuts, and it doesn't actually sit flat, but rather rocks on the tool rest. So it's not something I care for. Then there's this is a classic mistake of, I think, calling this would be more of a full round scraper. Although that's not a scraper, and we can. I oftentimes will see this type of grind, and I don't care for that. One of the downfalls with a grind like this is that if I try to make a peeling cut, if we take a look at the handle, well, that's not going to work so well to actually peel with it, given that in order to be able to make the peeling cut and actually line a small portion of edge up to make that cut, actually you have to move the tool to the side and then dig the long point into the end grain. That just creates a lot of not just tear out, but too much vibration. So I find that this can if I hold this straight, I can peel very simply and keep the tool at 90 degrees. There's a lot, so I think that there's just in terms of ways to incorporate this tool into simple work, spindle work, I think you can make a good sense of it. So first thing I'll do is actually sharpen this up, talk about why I sharpen it that way, and then just get into a nice, fast, and furious time. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Nonetheless, one of the things about sharpening and why this is relevant right now is we see the apex right here from the side view of the tool, cross section, and you have to make sure that every time you grind a skew chisel, you don't just go back to one side and grind it, but rather both sides. And my preference is that when I'm grinding and I have the burr on one edge, my burr is going to be with the long point. This will be my long point right here. Got to be careful. This is a white board, so I don't want to get keep the blood in the veins. You'll hear me say that once in a while. But nonetheless, I like to make sure that, based on those things I'd mentioned, I like to,
Wood world.
Nice. Okay. Wow, nice. So anyways, the thing that I'm going to do first, guys, I'm going to sharpen the skew. You have to make sure that when you sharpen the skew, you sharpen both bevels, okay? So I prefer sharpening the underside first, and the top side first, which places the burr on the underside of the tool, and then I'll sharpen the other side, which has the burr on top. And in my perspective on spindle turning, which is something that I did often when I worked for Shackleton Thomas in store, and they're out in the Northeast, that's where I did most of my trade work. Was to have when I have the burr on top, it means that if I'm peeling to smaller diameters, I'm moving consecutively to the left or to the headstock side, and given that, it's easier to peel from. I find that the tailstock side, where the rake of the tool is hitting the downward stroke of the spin, and it's in theory giving me maybe a little bit more edge life by maybe to the tune of a minute. So that's helpful to me. The minutes matter in the kind of things that I make. Yes, sir. Yes. So
okay, you referred to the top of the skew. What's the difference? How do you determine which is the top side of the skew and which is the bottom of the skew?
Perspective. In my perspective, the top would be this side with the long point facing the headstock, as I see it. If you're left-handed, it might be the other way around, but that would be okay too. So it's not a fact that this is the top of the skew. Typically, for right-handed turners, the top side of the skew would be with the long point facing the headstock. That's all. So since we're set up with the blank, are we able to take a look at some of the sharpening here? Are we able to set that up? Okay, cool. Right on. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this up, guys, and then we'll go ahead and create some. We'll go ahead and have some fun here. Okay. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sharpen the underside. This is all set up and ready to go. And are we able to, when I'm here, see what I'm doing? Yep. Yeah, sure. Okay. Sure. Oh, yeah, whatever's easier for you guys. I have to sharpen it anyways. This thing's blunt. Oh, are we? Okay. Cool. So when we sharpen, the main issue with sharpening a skew is taking it too far over on the side where the long point is. That would be right here, and basically moving past this area. And also, if you're sharpening a skew, let's go ahead and it's on wheels, you make sure the casters are locked. There we go. Okay. So what we want to do is make sure that the motion where the long point actually is sitting on the wheel is staying at 90, and that beyond that area, I'm not going over here, but rather the area, or in contrast to that, the side where I actually have the curve, I can kind of go crazy over here. One thing that you'll notice or see when I'm doing this, if I can try to find a view of this, you'll see that my hand is near the ferrule of the tool, and it's not back here. Below that, given that if I have my hand here, below this area, that's where I sort of create this diving board-like effect, and that's not how you use a skew when you're sharpening it, and it's how you're going to probably end up with a fair number of facets, which you don't want. So that's really all to say in this matter. And when I'm sharpening it, you'll see that I sharpen both sides. Every time I come back to the grinder, I always sharpen it twice, okay? So underside. Or sorry, excuse me, top side of the tool. And a little bit more here. Okay. So that's pretty good right here. If we take a look at this side of the tool over there, that's a pretty good looking grind. I would say that if I still have a small amount of a facet that's near the heel of the tool, I don't mind that, because as long as I'm revealing at least 1/4 of an inch of solid cutting bevel, that's okay with me. So it doesn't actually make a difference in the actual cut and the quality of the cut. So that's going to be good there. That's good. And it's enough to get us going. Turn this around and we'll put the burr on top. That would be with the long point, which when I'm actually making the cuts facing the left or to the headstock. So here, that's the long point. Just kind of guiding the tool along, and I'm making sure that with the right hand, there's no lifting action. There's no action where I'm lifting the tool up. It's just keeping nice and flat. Back to the 90-degree position. Okay, that's going to be good enough, and we'll go back to it. So if I'm setting up a skew correctly to...
Matt.
Sir.
I've noticed that when you are grinding, you're basically moving your body just like you do when you're turning.
Absolutely.
Is that something, and is it better to use your body or your hands?
Well, so when you're turning, it's all about making sure that the tool's an extension of the body, so the hands are just there to make sure that the pressure and weight is being applied down into the tool rest. There's always some innate pressure that's going into the stock, but it has to be very minimal, because you have to allow the body and the finesse that works to make the movements. That's what makes clean cuts, as I see it. So that's kind of how it works. And there's many ways it doesn't too. I find the easiest way is if you just take a pencil, which I don't have one right here. I'll just grab a marker. This is good enough. As long as that marker or the line that I see somewhere here is running a little bit above the center portion of the stock, that's, as I see it, fine. It's good enough for where I need to be. So that'll be okay. The one thing that I've mentioned, or one thing that I was showing, was just this little. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So right here, yeah, you can see that right there. That's just right there. That's good enough. And so basically, all I'm going to be doing is when I'm making these cuts, I'm actually going to make an incorrect cut first. I'm going to start at the very center of a blank, which is exactly where you don't want to cut, so that you can actually see where the tear out occurs. And so we have grain running with the bed, so we have a center work blank. Let's go ahead and turn the lathe on. We're going to be running quite fast. Quite fast in this case will be, let's see where we're at. That's not fast enough for me. I'd rather be probably around 2,300 RPM, so we're going to be spinning pretty fast. So I'm not going to ever take the tool flat and just go in like this and scrape. What I'm going to do is maybe start out with the short point of the tool leading, and I'll begin with the shear cut. However, when I come in, I'll actually just tear out initially so I can see something that allows me to know where the fiber is, how the fiber is being placed here. So how it's being cut. So that's a nice clean cut. However, you see, if you zoom in there, you can see a little bit of a tear out right there. That goes to show that if I were to lay down that little fiber this way, it would make more sense that the cuts I make are downhill, so that I have entire length of all of that fiber through, which supports the cut, and that would be a slice. When I have basically the entire orientation support the cut underneath, running with the bed. That would be a slice, where there's basically no end grain present at all. So that's one of the cleanest, and that's actually why you get one of the cleanest cuts with the skew in that way, because there is no end grain present in the cut. So now that we've seen that, it's good to know how to rough a piece down, and we'll go ahead and do that. And back to the same speed. And you can you can go to the right or to the left with the long or short point when you're planing. I prefer using the short point, and then you might want to know why. So if I'm planing and I'm making a cut to the right and I'm using the long point, it's just as a right-handed person, I end up all the way over here on the headstock, and this is just not a very comfortable cut to make. I can make it, but it's a little bit too troublesome for me. I find that it's a lot easier to just turn the tool around and come in this way. This is just an underhand cut. Underhand just means that I have a grip underneath. You just have to make sure that there's a point of contact that's almost pinching the tool into the the tool rest, given that if I have it over here, not here, that's a good cut. This is where you basically just lift the tool off, okay, the tool rest. That's not what I want to do. Nice overhand cut as well. And you'll see that when I'm doing this, I can actually go backwards too. When I make the cut, that's forward. And I find that with a skew like this, I'm able to actually expose a little bit more cutting edge as well. Short point.
How much of the tool are you actually cutting with?
Not much, really. Probably a good, probably about a good half. Probably about half the length of the bevel, though. I mean, that's a pretty good amount. So yeah, that's about where it's at. Right in there. And so once we get through this, then we're going to take a look at how we create catches. And that's going to be good enough here. I'll just place the square section over the stock like that. And I'll go ahead and move this over a little bit. And now we'll go ahead and plane the other direction, but I'll do it with the long point. Let's go ahead and tighten that down a bit. That's a little loose. I like to choke up on the tool so I'm not all the way back here. I find that if I'm all the way back here, the tendency is that the amount of pressure I'm applying into the stock's a little bit too much and too excessive. I would much rather be able to focus again on having the tool as an extension of the body, or thinking of it that way, and making sure that this is, the tool rest to me is just a pivoting point. That's really all it is. And now we're going to create some really nice catches like that. You want to see that? I'll show you some more of those. So if I first just make a nice clean cut, I am first leading with the bevel, and there I am, leading with the bevel, raise the handle. And what's nice about this is you can see where the dust is actually resting on the bevel of the tool, as I'm using a very good amount of the actual tool. And so when you get used to this cut, it feels really good. And I think the best form of this cut is when you're willing to be able to take a little bit of a risk with it, okay? And so that leads into actually catching. I imagine you probably think that. So, and that's true. So, so risky that we'll create some catches. So the catch occurs because the unsupported edge basically falls and drifts away from the cut in a way like this. And ever heard that before, seen it? Okay, well, beyond just now, right? Okay. Every single time. All right. Like that, and we can drop the handle, or drop the long point, and this just goes to show, oh, that's a good angle. Thank you for that. Here, and then right in there, okay? So it just jumps away. This is probably the cut that's responsible for maybe fostering the creation of new swear words that never even been heard of before, I imagine. It really is kind of like that. But the thing is that when you're between centers practicing this, this is the time to practice that. So it's the safest, probably hold between centers in this fashion to be able to practice getting used to and get comfortable with the skew. The cut like this isn't going to do much. That's just a standard scrape. It's not that you can actually cut the material very clean, given that you're not actually hitting much end grain if you're very light. You're actually not hitting end grain at all when you make this cut. There's no end grain present in that at all. So you can make that cut, but it's not going to cut as clean as the planing cut. It's just not, the grain orientation won't allow you to do it if you're just right here. That's not really possible. You want to be burnishing the surface. So if I want to create a catch with the short point, the same thing happens. So long point is leading now. This is the long point leading to and making the cut to the left. I can raise the bevel into the tool into the material. Create a nice shaving that feels good. All is going well, and everything is bright and life and good. And then that happens. So it's good to be able to know that you can create catches in order to know where they come from, how they happen and occur, in order to say, okay, I feel confident enough that to not create catches, but to move beyond that and to get confident with it. Any questions so far on that, or I imagine covering some things? Sir?
A minute ago, were you talking about practicing the cuts or
Yep.
the swear words?
Say what? Yeah. Nice. Which
Were you
words?
talking about practicing the cuts or the swear words?
Probably a little of both. Probably both, yeah.
I assume if you're just doing the shaving that you're going to dull the tool faster as well, correct?
If you're just making that cut, yeah, you will. I mean, really, you get about 20, and I prefer leaving the burr on. There's different theories on what you should do, just honing the tool, which is great. Anyone that has come up with a method that works well for them, you should try it out and see if it works for you. Shouldn't discredit it or try to compete with it. I think that's really, really ridiculous. And I see that way too much in this field, way too much. It's ridiculous. Because there's lots of really good techniques and people that are doing them that make them work effectively. So it's good to share the knowledge, get what you can out of it, and make the best of what you can. And you'll find that if you incorporate lots of different techniques and things, you're going to end up being a better turner. So that's what's good. That's the point of this. That's the point of doing these things. So that's enough just to see catches. Let's get on to something where we can actually have some fun with this spindle. Let's do something else. Have a nice piece of walnut in here. We'll actually finish that and turn a nice spindle out of it. So this isn't exactly worthy passing around, is it? So I think what I'll do is pass around something else. Let's pass around something else. Let's just put this aside. Okay, it's just good to see that. We'll go ahead and throw this rolling pin around if we want to do that, and also a few other pieces. So one of the things that I do in my work is that when I have a traveling year, which this year is a traveling year for the most part, or one where I'm teaching lots of classes, I don't have the time to make large production batches. Most of the batches that I make are, if they're a standard batch, I usually make about 50 things at a time, or around 50. This year, I don't have the time for that, so they're smaller batches, thus it isn't worth my time, and it's not profitable for me to sit around and just like make bowls and hope they sell somewhere. That's a waste of my time. So what I do instead is I make prototypes for a number of different businesses so that they can choose something for a following year that I can actually prepare materials, rough the stock out, etc. for them. So this would be a fairly standard item that I create for a company called Shackleton Thomas out in the Northeast. If you look up their website, shackletonthomas.com, you'll see that if you go into the accessories, I'm their bowl maker. I make all their bowls. I make lots of their accessories. I made rolling pins. I used to make those 100 at a time when I worked there, and I'll probably be going there maybe next month just to go and go see about being there for a week or so. They have an event there, and I'm going to go turn some bowls for them. But I typically will just ship out items to them, where they'll ship me the wood and I'll ship it back. So this would be representative of a thinner wall vessel, even though that's just a demo piece. The one that you're going to see here is a particular prototype that's been spoken for, not the actual piece itself, but just this as a item for a particular company. And this is just essentially a kind of a utilitarian dish. This is cut straight off the tool. There's no sanding on this. So you can see this. You won't see any tool marks on that likely. If you do, they're the kind of tool marks that I like. They're the ones that remind me that what I'm doing is craft, and it's handmade craft. It's not like try to make it, not sand forever. I prefer right now in my turning life, if you will, to make things that are clean enough that the satisfaction I get is straight off the tool. And maybe if I am doing sanding, the other item that you saw out there is a wet sanded item. So that was wet sanded with 220, 320, 400. So things like that. I'm going to go ahead and place this between centers. Kind of just do it by eye so we can keep this rolling. And let's see. Oh, down? Okay. I'll just, that way. There you go. Okay. Yeah, the other down. There you go. There you go. Exactly. That's exactly what we know. So, guys, we'll go ahead and just place this between centers, and that looks pretty good enough to be centered. That's good. Nice piece of walnut. Tomorrow, I think we're going to do like a rolling pin or something like that. That'll be kind of a fun little class, just to reinforce some technique. And this is just going to be something that will reinforce a type of object that I'd be making pretty regularly when I was doing production. Not as much for Shackleton Thomas, but for other places local in the Vermont, in the Upper Valley area in Vermont, where I was doing most of my work. And this would just be a spindle. I think the added touch here will be that we're going to see if we can put a loose ring on it, and we'll just have some fun with it. First cut will be just a transition of a pommel into maybe a bead, and then we'll just have some fun with it and see what we can end up with. The thing that I'm looking to do when I place an item between centers as well is make sure that the amount of pressure I have is adequate and not too tight. So what I'm looking for in that respect is to make sure that when I lock the lathe, this is the button, I go ahead and lock that and make sure that I don't have any play on the headstock side. The second I see that play at all, it's really at that point that I just need to tighten the hand wheel enough so that the play goes. When that's gone, then I'm done. If I put too much pressure on the tailstock side and I get down to a thin diameter, piece will vibrate very badly, So don't want to do that, and just want to mention that. Just simple things, and it's the simple things that go a long way to make sense for how you're applying those cuts, aesthetic, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like it to be about the same height there. I don't think we need to check it. It's going to be good enough. And now I'll go ahead and make a pommel, turn that into a bead. Well, area that's transitioning downhill into a bead. And here we go. And there's a peeling cut. Peeling cut's just taking the tool in at 90 degrees. Trouble with that tapered skew, that is this thing right here. This thing right here. Is that facing you guys now? Okay. I don't think I'll ever get that right. I'll just accept never getting it right. So yeah, I don't want to use something like this because, again, I'd have to be holding that tool over here to make that cut. When I'm doing that and that transfers over to what I'm doing here, or turn it on the other side, having it at this very extreme angle to basically line up the corner of a taper to make that cut is a bit excessive, and it's problematic because it's just going to be digging quite a bit over here. Too much force into the end grain going down. So that's really not something I want. That's why I like a soft sweep on the radius of the skew. That's just a preference. Again, it's not a fact. It's just a preference, and it works for me in the way that I like it. That's all. Okay. So downhill. This is with the long point of the tool. You can also turn this around and do it with the short point as well. I prefer an underhand grip likely. It depends on what I'm doing. I'll go ahead and do an overhand grip as well. That works out okay, and let's keep going. Let's transfer this area into just a little bead. And I think I'll make one more transitional cut from the pommel area into the area where the bead is. See where I'm at. I like to choke up on the skew. You'll see that when I'm out here, again, I don't go back here. I like to make sure that I'm very much near the ferrule of the tool. Just a preference. I find that having that dead weight back here gets lost and is not good if I don't have support with the body. I find that if I drop that weight, put it into the body, then the body's the thing that's actually making the cut. Thus my philosophy on just it being sensible to think of the tool as an extension of the body. Nice little transition. I can go ahead and make a short point roll over here on the bead, and should be good enough. I'm happy with that. And this is off the long point. What I'm doing here, and which will go to show something that I like to make sure of when I'm doing spindle work, which I don't do much spindle work anymore, is to make sure that the mass that I have on this side is accounted for so that whatever diameter I get down here, with respect to not having too much pressure from the hand wheel, is allowing me to be able to make the cuts down to the smaller diameter. So I don't have too much vibration. Long point will be able to make this cut. There we go. And it's looking okay. I just need clearance when you when you create a loose ring. All you're really after is making sure that you have enough clearance on both sides to make the cut.
Hey, Matt, when you were shearing that down, you were using the long point versus where you were using the short point last time.
Yes.
Was it just so you can hog material faster?
Down through here from the transition right there.
Right.
Yeah, I pretty much. Yeah, I find that you can make a more direct path with the long point of the tool transitioning into, say, a bead or a corner. Not that you can't do it with the long point, but I know that when what I prefer, at least, is that when you roll a bead into a corner, it should be that the long point is the last portion of the tool that you're using to get down in there. So that's really all that is there. And so now on to loose ring. Okay. Thing I like to make sure is just to know that the length of the ring on, I should say, this side, on this portion, is a little bit taller than the top of the bead is wide, for the sake of the amount of pressure that's going on underneath that will actually break the bead free and be a loose captive ring. Okay, so this will be something that you guys can have. This is a club. This is kind of something you guys can have. I'd be happy to just let you have it. Your thing. It's not my wood, so you might as well say, "Give me my wood back." You know, it's yours anyway. So there's that skew. And from this side, we'll just go ahead and go under. That should be pretty good. I don't necessarily care for sanding the beads. I like knowing that it came straight off the tool. That's a preference of mine. And just getting rid of some of that burnish mark right there. And long point. So that should be pretty good. Okay, I'll move this over pretty carefully. There we go. And we'll come back here. So we'll now make some downhill cuts. That's with the short point. And now I'm thinking about clearance, and I have plenty of it. This is actually, as I see it, if you're going to practice making, and this is something that will mirror the exact type of thing that we'll be making in the advanced spindle class. Just practicing items like this is a fun thing to do. Gets you an understanding of the skew and to not hate it so much. And let's go ahead and see if that we can break that free. Probably really close. And go to the other side. The high pitch, I like the high pitch. It's almost there. I think if we go through the other side, you got to be careful when you say the words go through, right? That either means funnel or napkin ring, right? So let's see what we have on the other side here, and there we go, loose ring. So and maybe we'll just have a nice little bead down through here. And long point, just to roll a small little bead right in there. The other thing about beads is that, you see the wider bead that I'm turning right now? Well, if I make a wider bead like this is where you really get to learn how to use the skew effectively, because the tool is actually traveling over a wider surface. The wider the surface it's traveling over, the more catches you're going to get. Thus, the more you get to practice. Don't you love that? Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's, if you get catches with the skew, don't dismay. You've already seen me have quite a few actually earlier. So don't be afraid to have catches with the skew. There's good things that it can do, okay? Start at the center. When I roll a bead, what I'm doing, I'm actually starting at the very center of the piece. I'll just put a V-groove to just kind of denote where the bevel's starting to rub. The question might be, am I starting with the long or the short point? Well, I prefer starting with the short point, actually, because I'm able to create more of a convex shape. If I start the center, I'm not going to make the cut, because if I do, with the long point, that creates more of a conical downhill shape on both sides. And what I'll have is more of an apex at the center than I have more of a rounded shaped bead. And that's not what I signed up for. I signed up to create a nice rounded bead. So the long point is preferred. Again, I usually don't start back here with the handle, all the way on the handle right here. That's not where I want to be. And here a bead, there a bead. And let's see about the other side. But this is where you really practice learning how the beads work effectively. There we go. And okay, and I'll probably just make this smaller diameter here. Just taper. Throw a little bit of 220 on it. Maybe some oil. Then we'll get on to basically the smaller scale of this. It's always fun to kind of just play with that bead. And perhaps we'll just create this, we'll just make this a simple taper. I'm leading with the long point right now, and I just like the trajectory and the way the tool is working at the moment. I have to be careful when I use a skew. That's pretty self-explanatory, but what I mean is that what I don't want to do with the skew is just lead with the long point of it and just go like that. You see that? that was like an instant catch because there's no traction behind the cut. What I have to make sure of is that when I'm making the cut, I'm actually doing something called leading with the bevel. I've made that reference, which is to say that instead of just doing that, I'm actually leading with this side of the tool first, the bevel. In here, raise the handle, and bring that in, just like that. Roll off, usually about the center of where that cove is. And I'm pretty happy with what I see. Am I? I always say that, and I'm like, am I really? I think it's okay. So we'll call that good. And I'll go ahead and, you guys can ask away. I'm just going to do the thing that we all love to do so much. I'm going to do some sanding. Of course, the amount of sanding is going to be, won't be boring given that I'm not going to be going through a bunch of grits. Just probably some 220, call it good. What do I have here? Where is it? Come on now. Ah, yes, that's my 220. Is it? No, that's not 220. Actually, my 220 is, there it is. Okay. Gonna go ahead and pull the tailstock side, but it'll be good to just make sure that I'm going to do this, just a little 220. But yeah, I want you guys to have this piece. It'll be just kind of a silly thing to have around. Doesn't serve much purpose, but it's good. I would say that maybe that's not true because it serves the notion of practice and a little bit of time spent on the lathe. This isn't too different than of what I would do in terms of a type of finish that a standard spindle would get. They don't typically get a very fine finish. They usually get something 180, 220, maybe 320, usually never 320. That's very unusual, actually, if a spindle is sanded at 320. That's not a common thing. And this area is shear cut clean enough I shouldn't have to really do any sanding with that anyways. So let's call that good. And I'll speed the lathe down significantly, probably to the tune of maybe about 500 RPM, close to that. And there's our ring. That turned out nice. I'll go ahead and slow that down. There we go. When it gets quiet, it gets library quiet, this thing. Yeah, it really does. That was like library quiet. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, it was like right in my nose. I don't mean to sound like an ogre. Sorry, guys. A little bit of oil is never a bad thing, right? Especially on walnut. Walnut's such a beautiful material. Just a little mineral oil. Yep, that's all. I like showing that you can actually get a decent finish with extremely basic finishes. And that's just what I usually take with me as my stock finish, just to show simple things and show good technique and just how to practice. That's one of the things I like to do. So I'll go ahead and actually apply a little bit more. And in this case, stop the lathe, get that around, we'll see. Just kind of a nice little piece here. So I'll go actually ahead and take this off the lathe, and I can just pass this around. You guys can check this out. I'm going to actually sign this after. You guys can take it and have it. I'd be very happy for you to have it. And a little bit more should be good enough for now. Just to throw some oil on it, we can see what we're making. It's nice to see. Okay, cool. So guys, we can just kind of pass this around, and then, was it down or up? It was actually up? Okay, cool. There we go. Oh, thank you. Cool. So you guys can check this out. Just see this. And what I'm going to do next is kind of a fun thing. Just a smaller version, on the more downsized version of something like this. And I just wanted to see that walnut finished. I just like seeing it. There you go. There you go. So that's just kind of a standard piece. We're going to do that in our advanced spindle classes. Just take a look at making something like that. Just have some fun with it. Now this is going to start off between centers. What's that? Oh. Oh, that was funny? Oh, okay, yeah. We're going to at least attempt it. Yeah, it'll be fun. So let's go ahead and get this between centers. All I'm going to do in this case is put a tenon on this so I can create a, we'll create the tenon and then create a little spinning top. The spinning top will turn into the top of the loose ring, and we're going to make a very ornate piece. So this goes to show that practice on the larger scale can really help to affect getting to that next stage where you feel some confidence and you feel how you will lose your hatred for the skew if you can create something like that, or at least create spindles or transition from a square section into round and do that. It's a very satisfying thing. So I promise you it is. But getting there, not necessarily. Getting there is like a lot of pain sometimes. So go ahead and start with a larger skew. It's been used enough that I'll go ahead and put a quick fresh edge on it. It doesn't need to, we don't need to see it. We've seen that enough, I think. So underside of the skew gets sharpened first. Oh, a little slip there. Back to business. And the question is, when I lock the lathe, the most important thing with any skew work at all, as I'd mentioned, and that's looking good, no play there, a little tighter, and okay, let's go back to high speed. High speed. So this just needs a tenon. It's way too slow for me. I like to run maybe around 2,500 for something like this. There we are. Again, not starting at the center, we saw what that does if I do start at the center. If I start at the center here, that's no good. That's where I get the tear out. If I really was serious about and dedicated to doing something incorrect, this is actually a safe situation to do it. So let's just see it one more time. If I do it, that's just the worst. That's a horrible cut. Okay. Started out nice as a shear cut, but again, this really is where you get that nasty tear out, right in there. That's bad stuff. That cut's brilliantly clean. That's awful. So good to see. Good to know. Sir. Round to square. You just make sure that. Say that again. If you transition to a corner like that, so you can do that. You would want to form the pommel first, which would be on this side, and essentially create a V groove, so that the other side, which would essentially be the round section, would roll into what would be a V groove. So that would be it. Yeah. Sure. So now let's rough down from the other side and go the other way. I'll actually rough it down with the long point of the skew instead of the short point. Back to the short point. And that should be decent. Let's see what we got. And I'll go ahead and put a tenon on this, and yeah, nice and clean. Excellent. In terms of what I have to work with in material, this will be nice. This will be nice to see. So a little tenon, and that'll be it. And what's nice about the length of this, I'll be able to show a few things with it in terms of downhill cuts and types of shapes we can get when we're working actually across the grain. So that's good enough for a tenon. I can go ahead and clean that up. Downhill shear cut right in there, and same thing in here. I like to make sure that the end grain is cut clean for the sake of being able to know what's on the side. What that means is that this is a fairly undulated surface. However, just due to shrinkage and movement. However, I want to be able to see that what's underneath the surface like this doesn't have any splits, doesn't have anything that is problematic. So start here, And what's kind of counterintuitive in making a cut like this is that when I'm actually cutting, truing up the grain here, is that when I lead with the long point, I actually have to roll the unsupported edge. This is unsupported edge. This is the supported edge. The edge that's making the cut here, that actually has to roll a little bit, unsupported edge, into the end grain. So that's just one where you can get a frightful amount of catches doing this too. I encourage you to just practice a little, and you'll get there. So now that tenon is not quite tapered. Now it is. Now we can go ahead and have some fun. And I'll still stick with the larger skew for now. And I imagine there's a knockout bar somewhere. And oh, careful there, John. Thank you. So don't do this. Don't do that, okay? It doesn't feel good. Okay. This thing's hot. There you go. Thank you. And I had a chuck around here. Oh, it's right there. Hiding. Hidden chuck. The hidden chuck. Here we go. You guys can also, if you want to, if you know, I know that I'm not trying to go outside of the program you guys have from the way you want to do things. You guys have questions, you can shout them out too. I'm okay with that. We can either do library hour or we can do just yell at me. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Wow, there it is.
So you said you have different size skews. What makes you want to change sizes?
Yeah, so good question, and we're going to transition into that from using this larger skew, then getting into the smaller half-inch skew to be able to work on much finer details. So it would really just be for that reason right there. I think that answers the question a little bit. It's also preference. It's not just, oh, you must switch because this is a fact of law of wood turning. I would just say that it doesn't make sense for me to work on materials that are that exceed maybe 3.5-inch diameter with a half-inch skew. So that might be a principle you could apply or an idea there. I don't really think of it that way. I just use whatever feels comfortable in my hands at the time. To be honest.
Do you have the same grinds on the different
sizes? I do.
Sizes?
All three. Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're not really different on any. And I don't like a too asymmetrically ground radius. Again, I like one that's fairly straight ground radius. There's so much more I believe you can do with it, and I find that there's a far greater amount of cutting edge you can employ. This is a little bit far off the lathe, even though I have far away from the chuck jaws, enough so that I'm actually going to apply a little bit of tailstock support, maybe actually show making a heavy peeling cut to get to a smaller diameter anyways. Then this will eventually turn into kind of a fun little thing. So back to the lathe, back to the speed, back to it. The angle that I have on here in terms of, so together about 40, that means that I have about 20, it's 20 and 20 on both sides. So I like to have between about 20 and 25. That's kind of where I like to be. The more blunt ground the angle is, usually the shorter the bevel will be. So I like to be around 20 degrees. And I find that will give me a length of bevel that will exceed the width of the stock. This is 5/16, maybe by no more than about 1/16 of an inch. So I like to be about the same thickness of the stock, or a little bit more. That's about my metric there. That's a preference, and that happens to do with how much the tool is digging or not, and I like a little bit of dig. If you can control what's happening on the back end of the tool, having a little bit of extra length in bevel and thus a little bit more dig is something that I'm okay with. So,
hey Matt, to follow up on that, do you find that a sharper grind is better for softer woods or harder woods?
So yeah, great question. So I would say that. So if I'm working with something like a rosewood, which I often will work with rosewoods on smaller scale. I will usually actually in that case actually remove the burr. I actually will remove the burr. That wasn't a relevant thing in the class today, but it's very good thinking there. It'll be something we probably talk about tomorrow or the next day. On softer materials, I don't mind leaving the burr on or actually having a heavy burr. The kind of grinder that I use in terms of just the wheel, not the grinder, I have an 8-inch grinder, which I prefer. I don't use CBN wheels. I like using ceramic, and I like to make sure that I get a really either a very serrated edge. I prefer much serrated edge. And so yeah, those are some preferences I have that I like to work with. I'll go ahead and, there we go. And heavy peeling cut. I'm just shortening the blank. And this is just, again, to shorten it, guys, safely. Okay. Okay, cool. So I don't mind using this tool for now just to get this diameter onto a smaller scale. But let's take a look at some of the things we can do with the skew in terms of types of shapes we can make. I had mentioned before that leading with the short point means that if I make a bead or I go downhill, it's going to be more of a convex shape, more of a rainbow shape. So we can go ahead and witness that. This is the short point of the tool. And the shavings I should be getting are, well, these right here. That's the shaving I want right there. Those are some nice ones. Now you'll see that curve is ever so slightly. You'll see the parabolic curve, just an unbroken line, however. But however, the taper is convex. It's a little bit more outflowing. Now that'll change when I use the long point of the tool. Long point will produce more of a actual point, a true point. With the tallest point of symmetry, longest point of symmetry being at the long point, that's really the only reason why that happens. Tool's still acting as an extension of the body. And you can see I create more of a point instead, okay? Now I'll go ahead and switch tools up here in a second. We'll turn a spinning top with a loose ring on it. It'll be kind of fun to see. And go ahead and get that started. I'm not sure if that's the conical shape that I want, but we'll at least start there. I'm going to switch it over to a smaller 1/2 inch and keep going. Okay. That's not the one, and there we go. So here we are. Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, I really like these. I like the collets.
I thought you were a Carter and Son handle guy.
I'm sorry?
I thought you were a Carter and Son handle guy.
I was back in my version of what the day is. When people my age say back in the day, some of you are probably you can start rolling your eyes now. I get it. I understand. It's okay. It's all right. Say what? 3 weeks. That sounds about right. Yeah, there you go. 3 weeks. We'll call it 3 weeks. Okay, so smaller. So this is going to just be smaller skew right there. That's blunt. This thing would cut better, likely if I picked it up off the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So I think what I'll do is I will sharpen it. So here we go. Other thing about skews is that actually Robust is we're coming out with a smaller 3/4 and a 1/2 inch skew right now. That'll be actually Brent English is he'll be cutting that stock in the next couple weeks. So that's nice, good thing. Because I've been asking, I was like, we need a smaller skew. This is great, but I can't exactly. I mean, there's a lot of things that it just needs some other thing. We need smaller skews as well. Anyways, let's go ahead and realize that if I use the smaller tool, it does the same thing. Oftentimes a little better, especially if it comes straight off the grinder. That's with the long point. Thank you for the video work, especially to see that. That was nice. Nice capture. That's the first catch I've ever had in my entire life. Okay. Are you guys bad liars too? Any bad liars out there? Say what? So let's take a look at what a burnish is. If I burnish the surface, and oftentimes a small conical shape top base is a good way to show a burnish, and it's a nice thing to see. Now that's the kind of start of it. I'm running pretty fast. To burnish the surface, really what you're doing is you're focusing on that pressure applied here. Now it's mostly going into the tool rest, but there is a little bit more added here, and it's a nuanced thing, but it's not like something that it wouldn't take you forever to learn how to do. But it's a very satisfying thing to be able to burnish the surface. So I'm not too far from about 3,000 RPM right now. Lead with the bevel. That's the idea there. And then what I'll do over here, kind of get that out of the way. When I make these, the fun thing about them is that I don't ever have particular custom orders for them normally, so I just get to have a lot of fun with the skew making tops. I love to make tops with the skew. One of my favorite things to do. It truly is. And we'll just have a little sort of finial at the end right there. That's not a bad thing. Now, the thing I want to be sure of is that I don't go too crazy right now in terms of making my stem. There's no such thing as a stem right now. This is just all mass that's supporting cuts that allow me to determine the kind of shape or the way I want this area to look, which I'm not exactly satisfied with. It's okay. It's not really that great. It's okay. And that's a little bit better in terms of detail. This is okay. And actually, a top spin's much better if you right now actually shear cut the very end of the tip so that it's sitting on a flat point. If it's sitting on a point, it's eventually going to, with the jackhammering effect, dance around like a drunken sailor, and it'll eventually flatten out anyways. So just know that food for thought is it's better to just create the point and actually come back and just create a very soft shear cut. Excuse me.
There's nothing wrong with a drunken sailor.
Good to know. So I'll maybe put a little bead right here. I call that a cheater bead because I don't really have to account for the long point actually rolling over an area that's so like infinitesimally small and thin that I can't even, it's almost just a V-groove with a little line down the center. It's not really, if you want to practice rolling a bead from maybe this section to about right there and roll that bead. That will get you the practice you need. When you roll little thin beads like that, it's not that it's a bad thing because you're getting tool work and usage out of it, and that's a great thing, but you're not going to practice using the skew efficiently by rolling tiny little beads like that. It's not where you're going to get the work out of it. I do know that. So that's kind of a little food for thought, and I do like that little bead there. That's okay. Now we'll go ahead and make some peeling cuts in here. You'll see that when I'm doing this, there's this sort of this motion where I'm gyrating the tool back and forth, but I'm also raising it up. If I just take the tool straight in like this, straight in, that's not so good. What I'm doing is to get down to the small diameter, kind of going back and forth, and then just kind of raising the tool up here like that. It's kind of a move. So I like to thread chase boxes. I haven't made a thread chase box in a really long time. I just haven't had the time to do that. But it's kind of like a threading motion to get down there, I find. So for those of you who've made any thread chase boxes, you would know that particular motion. That's not the loose ring that I wanted, just so we know. But I'll take it. It's early enough. I'll take it. Thanks. Yeah. So long point, there it is. And I'm starting to look at this and say, design implement-wise, do I like it? Do I not? I actually kind of do still. Usually when I'm thinking like that, I'm always ready to get rid of it because I'm just very critical of my work and how I perceive it, do it, the tactility of it, the aesthetic of how I create it. I take those things seriously. Those are about the only things I take seriously in life. There's a lot of things I don't care about. But there are a few I do. There we go. Tiny little bead. Actually, just get rid of it. And a design, all little design opportunities everywhere you go. You just gotta have some fun with it. And yeah, I think this is kind of nice. So Same idea as the other piece that went around, which was to say that what I'm going to do, and I really didn't want to create that here. Let's get rid of that. Okay, it's gone. Oh, it broke. My loose ring broke. Actually, it did. Hopefully the other one doesn't, though. It's going to be on a much smaller scale. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And what I'm looking for right now is clearance. The clearance I need is somewhere in here and in here. And what that just means is that I need the long point to go underneath the bead. Again, we've seen that before illustrated on the larger diameter. So if any of us can make a loose ring top in one of my classes, I will be very impressed if we can do that in a class. That'll be nice to see. So that looks pretty good for the V-groove. I think I'll be able to break through on this side. I think that's good. And I know I will on this side. Okay, so we'll call that good. Now I'm leading with the short point. That's the short point. There we go. There we go. There we go. And that looks to be pretty good right there. Remember, the key is not just clearance, but making sure that what I'm doing is getting down onto the small enough. Thank you. Good work there. Good in terms of camera work. Thank you for the camera work.
Why did you switch from short point to tall point?
Yeah, so basically now I'm getting in here, and I'm taking a look at being able to know that when I do break this free, I can't do it with the short point. It's best to lead with the longest point of symmetry into that little ring area. So that's really it.
But why not just start with the long point?
Right. So sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. It really is just a matter of how I'm feeling. Now, I find that what's problematic about leading with the short point is that if I start with the tool rotated over too much, as you can see with this side long point, that could hit the end grain on this side. And, well, we know what happens after that, right? And I will not demonstrate that. I will not show you, okay? That's at least not my plan, folks. So let's just round this area over here. And what I'll do is once I get the loose ring, I usually have enough mass on the piece, not a lot, but enough on a thin stem sort of level, if you will, that will allow me to be able to still come back and modify the curve that I have that goes underneath the ring, okay? So that's going to be an okay thing. I think that on this side, and I also want to make sure that this side, the taper, that diameter isn't so great that when I am bringing that long point in there, it doesn't, and I'm really getting underneath that surface that I don't drop the tool like this, hitting this side and then having a catch. There's so many catches you can have, so many catches. This is a catch. This is a great exercise, but it's a fun project to show that if you have a little tool control, you can get pretty far. And just have some fun. And I'm going to make sure that that diameter stays where it is for now, but I will start a downhill taper and a cut into that beaded area. That is what I will do. And no problem with a peeling cut right now, given that I can get down to that diameter for the sake of being able to turn the tool around this way, lead with the bevel, make my planing or shear cut. Nice slice right there. I think that if I go through, not here, but rather the other side, I'm pretty sure that'll break free. Pretty close. There it is. And we see loose ring. There it is. Nice and free. Okay? And there's that. And downhill cut. Oh, there's a little catch. One of the things that I value probably the most about some of the things Raffin has shared with me. Raffin was someone I spent some time with, and he shared a lot of perspective with me on things, business, woodturning, this and that. But one of the things was when you demonstrate, and you've seen some of his videos, I imagine everyone's seen Raffin's videos, that you just kind of have to go for it. And I think maybe some of the most boring things I've seen are when, or maybe not boring, but troubling to watch, is that when people try to be perfect. It's more fun, I think, when you can do something well or efficiently, but recover from a screw up. And I enjoy doing that. Well, not that I want to do it. I just keep jinxing myself. When I open my mouth, I'm just jinxing myself tonight. That's all I'm doing. It hasn't happened yet, so. Now, should I make a cut over here? Probably not. I probably have enough stem to work over there. A stem as in thickness over here to make a cut over there, but really not anymore. I mean, once you get around 1 inch solid, you can't do much. So now I'll work on the stem, the actual stem and the diameter of it. When I'm spinning a top, I need to make sure that the area around it is nice and rounded and it's not like pointy. That's way too thick for me, and I just don't like that. I want to make sure that this stem's nice and thin. There we go. And now you'll see a little bit of fine tool control. I just call it fine tool control. Or basically you're getting support not just from a light touch, but the light touch is supported by the body, and it's supported by the hands, making sense of the body being able to work in conjunction with the cuts you're making. So with the tool, should be an extension of it. That's with the short point. Again, reason I'll be doing this is this way is I can start right about the center of the rake, of the tool right here. So that's kind of that. And that should be okay. Not going to need to sand this for a whole lot. Not going to need a lot of sanding here, but a little. Little will be okay. I want to make sure that this is a nice rounded area that's comfortable to spin. And it's always kind of a fun thing, too, to add maybe a little bead in here just because I can. And if you can, then do it. Make a design implement out of it. And that's okay with me. I think that's something that's simple enough in terms of the design. Oh, almost lost the top just now. Let me see if I can get that back. And that's very thin. And there we go. So that works out for me. I think I like that. That's going to be okay. What I'll do now is do a little bit of sanding. Don't need to do much. Not going to spend a lot of time on it. I might actually put a little wax on it. What do I have for wax? Just like yeah, I have some wax on, wax off. There you go. I actually don't even think I have any, but it's okay. And there we go. Just a little. Just something to add a little oil. That'll get us on to the next thing. And, sir, I'm sorry? Oh, wonderful. How nice. That's good because this is going to be the greatest top ever. No, it's okay. It's all right. I'm happy with it. Say what?
They look nicer than the ones you did at SWAT last year, and those were pretty nice. Although they didn't spin very well.
Let's see what this does. Now you made me want to challenge you to a spin-off. No. So anyways, if we stop the lathe and see what we have, let's take a look. That's not too bad. I think that worked. That worked out. If I was going to put a real finish on, what I would be doing, well, if I was going to burnish, well, if it depends on the material I'm using too. If I was using, say, if this were a piece of Coca-Cola, I wouldn't be putting oil on it. It'd just be wax.
Do you need a skew to open it?
I'm sorry? Yeah.
Do you need a skew to open that can?
I do, please, yeah. Anyone have an oval skew? Yeah, that's funny. No, here we go. Thank you, John. So we'll just put a little bit on there. There you go. Okay, cool. A little bit of wax. We'll call this good. A little bit more. Okay, cool. Let's go back up to it. So this is spinning fast. I'd say fast means about 2,000 RPM, or sorry, it's about 3,000 RPM. I have to compensate for the fact that I have a very thin stem here, but I want to apply enough pressure, which is very minimal, to give myself a little bit of, just to burnish that in, that wax. And so I don't even know what I'm turning exactly at the moment, but it's something that isn't going to give me a great sheen anyways, but I just want us to see the tool work at the moment. And there we go. That should be nice. Question is, does it spin? We'll see soon enough, won't we? Yeah, it's spinning great. Wow, I never thought of it. I never thought of it that way. That's I appreciate that statement.
Cue the drunken sailor.
Yeah. Okay. I love the drunken sailors in the Dallas area Woodturners. It's a good thing. All right. So best way to do this is to also make sure that what you can see is underneath rather than over the top. So I won't actually snab it this way. Rather, it'll be snabbed this way. And there we go. So spinning top. That's actually kind of a nice area where the orientation of the grain is. I like that. It worked out nice. Question is, does it actually spin? Beyond the lathe is the question. Let's see. And I have this here. Is it forward or back? It doesn't matter because it's spinning, right? So I'll turn this around. So let's see what we can do. I guess drum roll, please. We'll do. Oh, that wasn't so good. That was fun. Yeah, I'll probably just spin it on the ground. That way I can kind of go crazy and just kind of do it that way. But I don't mind actually first just seeing what's going on here and seeing if I can actually get it. It might, and this board's a little, it's kind of slippy, kind of slippery. But there we go. And a good top will spin upside down. I like to be able to grab it at the ring so we can see that. It's kind of fun. They're a lot of fun to make. So again, a good one will spin upside down. I'll just see, you just see I'm pairing this off. It's like that. And if I don't do it here, I'll at least, we can pass this around. This will be fun. And then I'll initial it when I'm done. You guys can take it. So. It actually was. Let's go over here and do it. Are you ready? Okay. It's a decent one in that way. But either way, it spins pretty well. You guys can pass that around. There it is. There it is. Okay, you guys can pass that around. While you do that, I'll go ahead and throw on a different blank. And now we'll just transition entirely into new things. In terms of time, what do we got, John?
8 o'clock, we got about
15, 20 minutes? Okay, let's play around. So let's just do some exterior shaping, really. That's what we got. I really wanted you guys to mostly see the skew, so my goal in that way was reached for what you guys were going to see. Have some very green sycamore right here. And, oh, I actually do have a hole. I had no idea I actually had that drilled. That's good. So go back down to 0, which is actually my favorite speed. It's the safest speed. Okay? I will not be running a blank like this at 3,000 RPM. Okay? That was run at about 3,000 RPM. So I'll just put this aside for now. We'll have some fun here if we can. And, oh, look, there's a woodworm screw, too. I never can find anything until I do. And when it works out, I always feel good. So what I'll do now, guys, is show you a few different types of grinds. I'll pass some around, or one around. This would be an interior-exterior ground tool is what I refer to it. So we can pass this tool around here. This doesn't have the main grind that I want on it. Let me actually sharpen this up real quick. What I'm going to do is actually put the micro bevel back on that I prefer cutting with. And that should be good. There we go. So we pass this tool around. This is the tool that that'll be the main focus given the amount of time we actually have left. We don't have a lot, but we'll try to do something here. I'll go ahead and place this on the lathe. And in the process, switch tools. Switch tools. No more center work. And we'll go over to something different. And now for something completely different. Trying to find the right collet. And there we go. So this will be kind of fun. There won't be shavings at all, I promise. There will be none. There will be no shavings whatsoever. There will be lots of shavings. I'm lying. There will be lots of shavings. So this is going to be sharp enough at the moment. Okay, so I still need a little bit of tailstock support, or at least it's preferred. And I like to make sure that when I am between centers like this, I have about 2 inches of protrusion from the tailstock quill so that I have a little bit more maneuverability in that region. That's what I would say first. First thing I like to do is I'll make what I would refer to in what is a left-handed cut. Right-handed cut means the right hand's on the ferrule making the cut this way. Left-hand cut means that I'm actually coming over this way to make the cut. So a little bit more speed. Tighten that up a bit, and let's go ahead and actually have some fun here. Never going to start at the very center of a blank when I cut. That's a problem. If I start the center, means that the area behind the tool, the heel, right here is actually is being knocked against, thus just creating this sort of jackhammering effect against the edge. And that means that the sharp tool that I would have just ground, which this is sharp enough to use at the moment, and I just want to keep moving, is going to go dull very quickly. So let's go ahead and actually see what this can do. And we'll speed this up pretty well. This is about 1,400 RPM, more like, well, shoot, I'm getting a pretty good spin on this, no vibration, so that's more like 1,600. So we'll go ahead and actually, who wants to see some shavings really fly? Yeah, that's what you signed up for, right? No? So does that mean no? That means no. That means you need some hair. I got some hair for you right here. So stay away from me. No. Here. Turning up the exterior. This is very wet sycamore. All the way to the end, and that's a pretty good cut. The thing that I'm concerned with is making sure that I'm getting rid of the greatest amount of vibration that's happening across the bed, and that's my exterior area. So do this first. The area where I'm going to have the most amount of vibration is going to be actually on the tailstock side here. So that would be second. So 1, 2, and then 3. The third area is more commentary on being able to do the same thing as this face. However, I like to be sure that when I get underneath that surface, I know that there's I know that if I have any splits or anything that's undesirable, how much material I would need to take off, or perhaps decide that I don't even want to use the blank, and I can't. So I'm not going to start at the center and pull this way, given that if I do, the same idea happens when I start at the center of a piece like this. I'll have the jackhammering effect against the underside of the bevel here, and hit the cutting edge here. So what I want to make sure is that when I'm applying that same idea to the face, I'm starting in an area where what's behind the tool on this side is space, so that the cut that I make, every cut that I make consecutively, I can pull into an area that's already been cut and trued, which is actually going to create a little bit more edge life for you. That's going to help. And a good cut will be one where I can just go ahead and just go straight to the top. We'll do that left-handed again. And then what I'll do is I'll get that tool back, that mysterious tool that's floating around. Oh, it's floating, the one that's floating around. And so if I'm making bowls, that is to say roughing bowls out in large volume, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on what I'm doing in a calendar year. There are years where I'll have a large rough out. There's other times where I won't rough anything out because I'm getting shipped material to make items and I ship other places. So if I'm going to do that, I usually make one cut here and then just go straight to the top. Simple enough, and what I want to do is on the other side, true up this face. I probably should have done that before, but I haven't gotten far enough into a piece that if I did realize that what was under here was, say, a split or something undesirable, that I couldn't actually stop, because I haven't done that much work anyways, and I wouldn't exactly call that work. This is fun. So, same idea on the face here, just to true that up. And this is actually now what I would refer to as a blank. You might think that's strange because it's like, well, no, you were just working on a blank. That's true. The way I define a blank is ensuring that both the exterior and both the exterior and the faces have been trued up sufficiently enough that I don't have any vibration, so that when I'm making my cuts, I'm not entering a world of vibration. Rather, an entire piece that has nothing on it until I decide to do something with it. So it looks like my tool, the smaller one, is that around? I think I can slow this down. Make sure the hold is good here, and if I can, I'll go ahead and just make some push cuts to the top. Is my the smaller? Oh, thank you, appreciate it. I'm going to switch this up. Just throw it down there. Well, probably don't throw it. Right? Maybe don't throw it. I don't know. If you do, just make it really interesting, I guess. I don't know. Don't even know what to say with that. What's that? I probably do. I think I do. Okay, let's get to it. So I like this grind. If you guys took a look at it, I imagine you did. Well, what I like about it a lot, and well, maybe I have this. Okay, this is what I have for the grind, just real quick. So let's go ahead and remove these things. What I'm looking at, so for your viewers elsewhere to be able to check this out much better, because you guys saw it here, it's kind of like something like this, where I have a micro bevel and I have a secondary bevel, kind of like this, and then looks something like that, okay, something of that nature. And what I like about this is that basically the secondary is basically I'm bending the fiber here. As long as I'm bending the fiber and returning to a standard push cut right in this area, the fiber should return about where it was before, and I should usually get a much cleaner cut. If you use a single bevel tool will always impart more vibration. So this is our main right here, and that's really where the cut's happening. But that's just the grind on there, and that's the one that I prefer using. So let's go ahead and do that. Nice thing about it, sir. So yeah, good question. So yeah, so the micro bevel's ground at about, in this case, nearly 60 degrees, about 60 degrees. I prefer having the cutting edge ground there, so 55 to 65 degrees is good. Now the secondary bevel, you might wonder, well, what's that ground at? Clearly that's another bevel. It doesn't matter. It's arbitrary because it's really only exists to be swept out of the way, so that when I'm making the hard to see, but we got the idea because you guys all saw it. So no need for the video work there. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and make some cuts. Now I refer to what I'm doing as just cutting with the body. I've mentioned that before. Go up to a pretty good speed. And height-wise, it's a little too high in this case, so I want to make sure that the nose of the tool, or near the nose, it's a fairly flat nose, in this case, is a little bit, is about the dead center of the blank. And I'm just using the center mark from the live center to be my guide, essentially. So I can start right in here. Excuse the hair. I have way too much of it. I would definitely say that I don't have the right hair for my career at all. Doesn't make any sense, I know.
Braggart.
Sorry? Oh, did someone wish they had hair? Is that what it was?
I called you a braggart.
A brag? Okay. So here, and I'm going straight in with the nose of the tool. It's really cutting with the full length of the left wing right here. I find that if the body's in contact making the cut, I don't need to be overly cautious over here. The only thing I'm going to be applying in terms of pressure is just enough pressure to essentially like ring a doorbell. Okay, it's very light. It's not a heavy cut. So I think what we'll do is maybe just end on seeing the exterior, since we're probably short on time, or are we right at that spot? 5 minutes? So maybe one more cut. Notice that when I make the cut, the tool is very much in line with the forearm when I make it too. And I also like to stop right about there just because I don't have any fiber support beyond that point. So then I'll go ahead and maybe put a tenon on here. Why not? Maybe start right at the platform area and do the same thing. And I think maybe what I'll do, if I can, hollow this out real quick. Fast and furious. I typically don't have my right hand this far back when I'm making a bowl like this. But I'm just, again, as long as the tool's against the body, that's all that matters. Enough pressure to ring a doorbell right there. It'll be okay. Go down to my favorite speed, which is 0. And we can call that good. So that's a pretty decent surface. No tear out to speak of, I don't believe. And what I'll do now is I can... Okay. Whoops. There we go. And... Oh! And for my next trick. Wow, it looks like I almost owed you guys money. Sorry. So let's just maybe do a little hollowing with this. You guys can cut me off here in a minute. I just wanted to show you, rather, some of these techniques. And here we go. Good enough for me. When you true up a piece, so you'll notice that that's a little out of round. I can expect that. When you actually, so you're not actually shaping, you're not creating a finalized shape in this case. What you're actually doing is you're roughing a piece out and you're not in the finalized state yet. You're in a shaping mode. So this should be out of round. Typically it is. I don't care at the moment. I'll go ahead and add a little tool work here. Screw that up, and then what I can do is come back with the other tool. Just get that away. Downhill cut. It's often said that you can't make a downhill cut. That is not true. You can make a downhill cut. You can make it so effectively that it's nearly as clean as the uphill cut, so long as the flute that you're using is not wider than 3/8 of an inch. This is a 1/4 inch flute, so if I make a downhill cut, the shaving or the chip that's going through and then expelled, not so much expelled because it'll pick up and end up being a thicker shaving, but the point of contact at the very tip of the apex is much thinner. So I find that if you're running at a higher speed, you actually can make a downhill cut. So if you hear someone say you can't make a downhill cut, that's not true. It's just that there's nuance to it. That's all. Okay, this is a downhill cut. I think what I'll do is actually make a nice little OG shape from the top. Why not? Given that our time is running low, might as well just turn this into a shape that's kind of highlighting of something nice. The other thing that I should have passed around, which I actually will, is that one of the things I'm working on right now is making prototypes for, because this is a teaching year, so I'm not making a lot of piece or item work, but I'm making bowls that are outflowing kind of like that. So where is it? It's around. Thought it was around. Oh, maybe I don't have it. The bowl right in here. Actually, I do. Never mind. So in here, guys, this is what I would be aiming for. This is very thin. I have to be very careful with it. This was given to me by a friend in Seattle. It's a piece of madrone. This is very thin. This is the kind of thinness that I prefer. That's straight off the tool. There's no sanding on that. But I am going to wet sand that piece. But I want you guys to kind of just at least get an idea of the kind of shape that I'm creating and what I'm working on with that. That's something that would be ready to start wet sanding probably at 220. So that's thin. You can see the light through it, and it might float to the ground. It's a little too thin. But it's okay. I'm fairly happy with it. So I can also make an uphill cut here too. Takes quite a bit more tool control on this side because I don't feel it's not natural for me to make an uphill cut this way. Nonetheless, that's just kind of an idea of something that I can play around with. So this is kind of more of a ceramic-looking form. What I can do with this tool nicely is actually steer it very well into that corner, bring the body back to support the path of it. Again, I'm cutting with the body. So this is kind of more of a ceramic form. This is very similar to a type of style, a very standard type style that you'd see in ceramics. This is often a type of bowl that I would see come off the come off the ceramic wheel when I was out in the Northeast making bowls for Shackleton Thomas regularly in their workshop. Nonetheless, what we can do is kind of just hog through this pretty quickly. We can. And I'll probably just stay with the smaller gouge. Why not? It's what I have. So I'll do that. So the thing about this tool and what happens with it, hi, how are you? Good. Is what I'm doing is that when I get to the very bottom of the cut or near this area, this is at least to be able to see what's going on with the tool. It's not because we're going to get through it, but just to take a look at what's going on with the cutting action. So what's happening is that the nose of the tool is coming straight in to the corner. I'm just trying to get myself out of the way so we can see. Thanks for the video work. Great video work and all that stuff tonight, guys. I appreciate it. But we're just seeing what's happening with the cut here. Okay, and there we are. Now I start right on the nose. That's with the flute in about the 1 o'clock position. I eventually transition down towards the center, make a cut that turns the tool over so that the left wing is making that cut all the way through. The left wing's engaged all the way, okay? It's like that. So that's getting a little thin. I like that. There we go. And now I have enough material taken away that I can go ahead and angle the tool rest in just a bit more. I'm sorry for those whose shavings I missed. I'm happy to just throw some at you if you want to come up. You can feel involved. I'll just throw some at you if you want it. So let's see what we got. I'm sorry? It is. Yeah, there you go. If you.
The reason you pass your finger on the outside is to feel the
That's
thickness.
correct. Yeah, and it's also just a creature of habit kind of thing. But I find that that's really the reason, and I do that with lots of things, and I probably do it way too much than I should. But I get good results, not necessarily because I'm doing that, but I'm just being conscious of the amount of pressure I'm applying in the overall cut and in the process too. It gets me integrated with how I'm cutting and making sense of it all together, if that makes sense. So I don't mean to sound like esoteric and weird. I don't mean it that way. It's just something that helps to support. How much more support it really gives? Probably not a lot, but enough that I'm engaged in the cut. And I find that if you're cutting with a body, pulling that all together very slowly helps.
When you're getting thinner, do you actually feel it though?
So every time I hear you talk, I keep looking this way, and that one, it's been you the whole time. Say that again.
When it gets thinner, are you actually feeling the cut?
Oh yeah, I do, and I prefer that to. I prefer feeling a cut as opposed to using calipers. This is not to say that I am not endorsing the use of calipers. Do not take it that way, and I mean that because calipers and measuring tools to get comfortable with all matters turning is a very good thing, and I use calipers all the time if I'm making piece and item work. I use them all the time, but not if I'm just doing something like this and I'm making a prototype. It doesn't matter. I just make whatever I want. Because if you have the prototype, someone will want it, or they'll want to see a picture of it. And so when they see pictures of it, you know, they just want they want the form. They don't care about how thin it is. They'll talk matters with that, matters of thickness and such, and an actual product with you later. And so that's how I see it. So anyway, that makes sense, I think. Go a little deeper. Okay, and then come in here. This is kind of a position where basically if I get down towards the stem, I don't mind actually bringing the left hand over like this, going under like that. I have a strong position there because I'm right-handed, and body makes a cut like that. That's not an unusual cut in production bull turning. Where basically you come around this way, transition towards the other side, come here. Not an unusual thing to see, actually. Anyways, this is something I can probably just take off the lathe here in a second. I have a parting tool, so I'll just part it off. And maybe one more cut. I'm famous for saying one more cut, and I say I make 5 more. Why don't I actually make one more cut? Ooh, a couple cuts. That's like 10. That's like 10 cuts, John. Don't say that to me. I'll take advantage of that all day long. All right, so fresh edge, guys. And what I'll do is, yeah, I have my parting tool there. Okay. In this way? No, not in this orientation. It would if it were an end grain orientation. It would dry a lot more evenly. It would not in this particular orientation. Now, this is going to warp and disfigure quite a bit more. This will, yeah. So anyways, let's take another pass. The other thing is this. It might sound counterintuitive, but what I'm going to do now is actually slow the lathe down. If you make a bowl that's very thin, like this, more of a ceramic style piece, but very thin, it's not that the form, so ignore that portion of what I said, but when you get this thin and you're turning too fast, the piece will whip around so much that it'll smack against the bevel, so much so that if you think you're going to win by going faster, I promise you lose. Got to actually go down more like closer to probably around 500 RPM. That's too fast. It's too fast, too fast, too fast. 7, 6. Okay, about right in here. So when I'm really focusing on a very thin wall thickness, this is actually the speed I'll be at, is somewhere right in here. Yeah, that's great video work. Thank you, guys. And now we're seeing that thin wall, aren't we? I'm seeing it too. It's cool. It's like we're both watching the same video or something. And come back. You know, John said 10, so he just didn't realize it.
Rookie mistake.
What's that?
Rookie mistake.
So when I get down to an area that's closer to the interior, that's closer to the chuck. So really, in theory and in practice, I can speed the lathe up. All that good? Okay. And then, thank you, guys. I'm not a perfectionist, not at all. Not in the least bit. I swear I'm not. Well, I will be. Not that I'm perfectionist, but I do need a burr, a little bit. Just a burr. Okay.
Is this where you make the funnel?
Say what?
Is this where you make the funnel?
This is where the funnel happens. That's a pun. This is where the funnel occurs. That's a pun. There we go. And it just goes to show more ceramic style object. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, guys. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Matt.
You're very welcome.